Who else is absolutely sick of hearing about GLP-1s? By which I mean Ozempic, Wegovy, Mountain Goat Jaro, as I call it. I think it's actually called Manjaro. It may seem counterintuitive doing a podcast about a subject you're completely sick of, but this isn't the kind of podcast you think it's going to be. It's not about the evils of the drug or the huge benefits, because there's tons of health podcasts out there on that. And it's not an interview with people who've taken them and their experiences. This is a podcast about how to protect your head in a world that is once again obsessed with weight loss. To help me do this, I've invited in an expert on the subject. Dr. Charlotte Ord is a body image and eating disorder recovery expert and author of Body Confident You, Body Confident Kid. And she's here to share her wisdom as a counselling psychologist.
There's almost an assumption, if I lose weight, then I'm going to be healthier, I'm going to feel better about myself. Well, of course you're going to feel better about yourself because you've been stigmatised. But the trouble is, that's making the individual body the problem rather than the system.
So plug in and tune out the rest of the world, because I promise you're going to feel a whole lot better and more centred by the time this episode is finished. I really wanted to get you in because it would be fair to say, Charlotte, that you have experienced all sides of diet culture. You were kind of a diet culture survivor, so to speak.
Yes, and in some ways a promoter of it unintentionally too.
Yeah, and I like that because my whole first 30 years of my life was about, whether I knew it or not, I was promoting diet culture by being on diets and obsessing about my body and talking about it with my friends and all of that stuff. So Charlotte, you have a history of eating disorders yourself.
Yes, that's right.
So bulimia,
anorexia.
Yeah. And you found yourself as a personal trainer.
I did, yeah. So my history is I was very sporty, and so it was a natural progression for me to go into sport, personal training, and I love that side of it. But I was also very much immersed, like everyone else, in diet culture and a culture that really heralded thinness. And so, perhaps unsurprisingly, fitness became very much about how thin you could get, how lean you could get. And it started to really take our eyes off actual health, even though it was under this kind of guise of health. That's not really what people were promoting. And
this was back in the sort of, how old are you, Charlotte? Do you mind me asking?
I'm 43.
So we're talking in the sort of 90s and noughties.
Yeah, early noughties, yeah.
Where fitness was very much, it happens now as well. Diet culture was sort of under the guise of fitness sometimes.
Absolutely. And in that industry, disordered eating was so normalised. It was what everyone was doing. And I think when you're in an environment like that, it's really hard to see the wood for the trees. And so I was fantastic at helping people lose weight. But what I soon realised was that actually most people can lose weight. Not everyone can keep it off. In fact, most people can't. And it's at that point that things start to get really problematic health-wise, because the pursuit of this sustained weight loss meant that people had to engage in disordered eating in order to try and have any hope of sustaining that. And so the waters get really muddied. And it was when I had that realization, which took several years, that I started to change.
So and it would be fair to say that the realization happened for you while you were signed up to be a trainer on The Biggest Loser UK.
Yeah.
So some people may have seen recently, there's Netflix documentary on this, or the American version of the show, which is basically a competition where fat people were played against each other to lose weight.
Yeah, that's right. When I was cast on the show, I was already starting to become more aware of the health at every size paradigm, which is one that really emphasises respect for bodies of all sizes and health behaviours that aren't based on weight, because it recognises that actually there's no proven safe way of losing weight. So that was very much...
There is no proven safe way of losing weight?
no, that's it. And so I was already starting to kind of question this pursuit of weight loss, particularly in the context of health. But I felt for the show, I was better. I could do more on it than I could off it. And so I did do it, but I felt quite conflicted about it at the time. And certainly afterwards, when you have to look at participants in The Biggest Loser, people that have had bariatric surgery, to see that actually whilst people can lose weight, almost always it's regained again and more. And that of course causes huge psychological distress, not to mention physiological issues too. So yeah, so it was quite a journey and quite a turnaround for me.
And what, can I ask you, so what then happened? So you are a physical trainer on The Biggest Loser, suffering from an eating disorder yourself. What was the point where you went, I can't do this anymore? And what then happened?
So it was a slow process, but after that, I decided that I would start to change my business model, which was quite a scary thing to do in the fitness industry, where everyone wanted fat loss. That was what was selling. That's what people wanted. But it just felt like I was being completely inauthentic when I had that realization that actually, far from supporting people's health, I was actually contributing to making things much worse for them. And I wanted to create a space where people could come and not be focused on weight, but actually look at their strength, their flexibility, their good nutrition, those sorts of things that actually do have health benefits and don't compromise people psychologically. And so that's what I did. And actually it was a lot more well received than I thought, because it was like a breath of fresh air. No one was doing it. Yeah.
And then did you get better? Did you heal yourself, so to speak?
I did. I mean, I think when you have an eating disorder, especially a long-standing eating disorder, it's not like you one day are recovered. For me, it's a practice every day. I practice recovery every day. And so there's certain things that I know I need to do in order to stay well, to not slip back into that. So it's almost like a prescription, if you like, a self-prescribed itinerary of things that I do that help me to stay.
And we're going to talk. And we're going to talk about that later. In fact, we're going to do a special bonus episode in which Charlotte talks about the things that keep her healthy on a daily basis, by which I mean mentally healthy. Let's talk about body acceptance, really, because at the centre of your work and at the centre of what we were getting to, which is I feel we have now gone back from, is that actually shaming people for their bodies, for the way their bodies look, actually leads to worse health outcomes than allowing people to be just who they are. And I'm really interested in that, because every time I hear someone, again, and this is what I wanted to talk about, this is not an episode that judges people for taking GLP-1s or anything. Everyone has their own reasons, and I'm totally pro-choice. What we are suddenly getting away from is the realization that health, as you say, health exists at every size, at all sizes, and that weight is one one predictor of health outcomes. And we'll get into that a bit more in a bit. But first of all, I wanted to sort of talk about the effect that GLP-1s are having on people's mental health. Okay, so I did a bit of research with my followers on Instagram, and I kind of asked them, what are your thoughts on weight loss injections? And the range of messages I got back, I think, really showed the complexity of the issue. So, for example, there were two messages I got from two different women who both have different eating disorders. Okay. So the first person has binge eating disorder, and because of her binge eating disorder, is classed as morbidly obese. She has gone on Manjaro, and her life has been transformed by it. She's like, I can walk upstairs again. I feel healthier. And she made the point, and I think this is really interesting. For her, GLP-1s have enabled her to eat like a normal human being, right? Just like it doesn't take up her head space anymore, okay? But then I also got a message from a woman she said to me, I'm in active anorexia. I weigh 40 kilos and I have managed to get hold of these drugs. So we have two sides of the coin. On one side, these drugs have genuinely been absolutely transformational for quite a few people. And I think that is wonderful and freeing. And as someone myself who has suffered from binge eating disorder, I know how awful it can be to be under that constant food noise. And I want to get into food noise in a bit because I think we're confusing food noise for some people. But then there's this whole other group of people, mostly women, who they got in touch with me, and these are women who will probably never take. They will never take these drugs, okay, but who nonetheless are really affected by the endless conversations about them. And I'm aware that I'm kind of perpetuating that by centering this podcast on it. The obsession with it in society and culture has really affected their mental health and undone a lot of hard work that they did on themselves to free themselves from diet culture. And these are the women I really want to speak to with this episode. And someone sent me this message, and again, I'm not going to name the person because it's anonymous, but I thought it really summed up what I was hearing from lots of people. So the question I put out, Charlotte, was, what are your thoughts on weight loss injections? And this person replied and said, honestly, I hate them. All the work people like me did for decades to shake off the negative body image noise we were raised with, and it's worse than ever since the injections came along. It's properly fucking with my head. I keep seeing colleagues who have halved in size. The Serena Williams thing really affected me. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days, by which, I mean Serena Williams recently has started publicising a type of weight loss injection in America. This woman continues, suddenly thinness seems to be almost obligatory if you can afford it. It's just so sad after all that body positivity stuff. I believed all that, and now I feel like it was just marketing. And underneath it, society really hadn't changed at all. Charlotte, is this what you're hearing in your clinic and your work?
Absolutely. And I share that sentiment too. And at the same time, it's not all lost. That hard work isn't undone.
Well, that's nice to hear.
I truly believe that, because it's early days as far as GLP-1 use purely for weight loss is concerned. We actually don't know what the long-term safety data is going to show. Biologically, psychologically, socially, it could have really significant implications. And as you said earlier, we're not here to judge people that have decided to take it. But I think it's really important for those people who have decided not to, whether that's because they can't tolerate it, they don't want to, they can't afford it, to remember why they've chosen not to and what their values are around that. Because that serves as something you can keep coming back to regardless of what those around you are doing. So, yeah.
And isn't it important as well? I kind of feel like it's really important, if people are thinking about it, that they come to it from a place of genuine health. That the decisions are made from a genuine desire to look after their health and their well-being, and not from a place of fear and comparison, and because they think that if they lose 10 pounds, the world will be a better place, which is the kind of central belief that we were all bloody well brought up on. And I also think, Charlotte, sorry, this is where I'm like, I'm not an expert on these things, but I am a woman who's like lives in this culture and has grown up in this culture and has a history of eating disorders. And when people, I like to run around in my pants as a size 18 woman, letting it all hang out and all wobble around. And people are like, God, I wish I could be like you. I wish I could be so confident. And I'm like, confidence is a trick. It's a load of bollocks. I don't have body confidence. I just have a desire not to hate on this precious body of mine anymore, right?
Yes.
But also the thing I want to say to people is, of course you don't have any confidence. Of course you don't have any fucking confidence, because we grew up in a world of diet culture, and a couple of years of people talking about body acceptance on social media, it is not going to solve it, And so it makes absolute sense that this should be getting in your head. It would be weird, it would be weirder in a way if it didn't. It's kind of appropriate, by which I mean, don't beat yourself up for feeling this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have grown up in a body that has been stigmatized, it makes absolute sense that you would want to get out of that stigmatized group by whatever means is possible, because that's an awful experience and that's a reality for lots of people. The difficulty is, I think, for many people making a decision around whether to take these drugs or not, is whether it is in the interest of their health or not. Because it is, as you said earlier, such a multifaceted thing, our weight. And we live, particularly in the UK, in a very weight-centric medical system. And so there's almost an assumption, oh, if I lose weight, then I'm going to be healthier, I'm going to feel better about myself. Well, of course you're going to feel better about yourself because you've been stigmatized. But the trouble is, that's making the individual body the problem rather than the system being the problem.
Okay, so but the thing is, I'm listening to this and thinking about, if you're in a body that's been stigmatized, by which you mean someone who's a higher weight, you know, yes, of course, you are going to want to make those, you might want to make those decisions. But I am really interested in the kind of mass body dysmorphia that exists, where people believe they are quote unquote fat when they're just not. Okay. And this is what slightly concerns me. Okay. Because I hear a lot about food noise. And again, I know like we can't judge people from what they look like on the outside at all. But I have spoken to women who are, you know, objectively very small, like slim, okay, lower weight, who have said to me, and I love their honesty because it's really important, and they've said to me, but I have food noise. I binge on chocolate at night. And when I asked this person what that was, they were like, oh, it's a, you know, they were essentially describing a bar of chocolate. And I was like, I'm not sure that's food noise. I think that might be hunger, you know? And the thing is that there's this risk that because of diet culture, because of how entrenched this is, right, that many people are confusing things like food noise with hunger. And food noise, let me tell you, like, and this is not to undermine, because I think the fact that someone feels the need to block that out is in itself so sad and so tragic. And, you know, but in my mind, it was like, you'd be better off spending your money on therapy rather than GLP-1s, right? So it's not to say that this isn't, you know, that this is, you know, get over it, because like, hello, like it's not that easy, right? Because this is like in our very fabric of society. But I do think some of these words are getting misused because of body dysmorphia. And, you know, I also hear a lot of people say that they've struggled with their weight their whole lives, you know, and I hear people say that to me, oh, you must struggle with your weight. And I'm like, actually, what they're struggling with is these sort of toxic standards of diet culture that say that to be of any worth or value, we must be thinner. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Absolutely.
I like, so when I see someone like Serena Williams, and again, you know, it's her choice. I don't want to get into that thing of like describing how someone looks, but you know, to me, she's not an obvious candidate for GLP-1s. And I think, have we gone back in time? Like there seems to be this massive body dysmorphia. And I hear it as well, where women say, oh, as I get older, I can't shift the menopause weight, or I can't lose the weight. And I think Serena Williams said that she was unable to lose the weight. And I'm like, well, maybe if you can't lose the weight, it's
not meant to.
It's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's serving a purpose for your body. I mean, again, I hate that we're getting into the weeds of like talking about women, but I feel like we have to be able to talk about that, because weight isn't, you know, it is. Yeah. I mean, I get, as you can tell, I'm getting like really worked up about it.
What's happening is a complete disconnection from our bodies, and stakeholders, pharmaceutical companies are just cashing in on people's shame, on people's fear, and making us feel like it's not normal for our bodies to change across our lifespan, which of course it is. And going back to what you were saying about food noise, the term food noise really frustrates me, because food noise is just a buzzword for food preoccupation. And one thing that we know causes food preoccupation is food restriction. And what does dieting encourage? Food restriction. So I find it incredibly frustrating that we're now pathologizing something that we know is a direct cause of what people have been told to do for their health, in inverted commas. And so if I have a client coming to me with food noise, the first thing I'll do is encourage them to get on a really regular eating schedule so that they are properly nourished. Because as long as you are restricting food, you're likely to have food noise.
When I got treatment for binge eating disorder a few years ago, and if people want to go back and listen, I actually did an episode with my therapist, Jess Griffiths. You can go and listen back to it. And so what I'd always done is I would binge in the evening. It was like my time, secret, quiet. I would go and eat vast amounts of food. And then almost to counteract it the next day, I just wouldn't eat all day. And she was like, well, there's your first problem. She's like, so we need to know what if this is actually hunger. And so she forced me for the first time in my life to start eating 3 meals a day and snacks, right? And I had to write it all down. And when I tell you, Charlotte, that it transformed my life and has transformed my life, like I will never, ever miss a meal now, because it is just... it's the basis of all good health, my mental health. Like I can't not, and I wonder how I managed to go through decades of my life living on literally cocaine and packets of Quavers. Do you know what I mean? And that was basically my diet until I got sober.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, body image issues is about not feeling safe in your body. And so when I'm working with someone who is struggling with their body image or is struggling with disordered eating or both, I try to work from the bottom up, because we can think about food and about our relationship with food and our relationship with our body and the context that we swim in all day long. But actually, if you don't feel safe in your body, you're going to have a hard time trusting it and connecting with it. And so that's one of the first things I do, is help my clients to actually feel safe in their body, to regulate themselves, because body image fluctuates. One day I feel great about my body, next day not so good, photo might come up I don't feel great about, someone might give me a compliment. It ebbs and flows, and I think that's really natural. But if you're constantly being pulled around by that and reacting to that by trying to control your body, you're just getting more and more disconnected from it. So coming back into your body, being able to stabilize and to feel safe is the first thing that needs to be worked on for me.
Okay. So do you think that these conversations, constant conversations about weight loss injections, could make people feel lack safety in their bodies suddenly?
Absolutely. Because I think it reinforces this idea that unless you're a certain body size, you're not okay. You're not acceptable. And all of us need to feel like we're acceptable. That's just such a fundamental human need, to feel like I am okay as I am, not that I'm okay if I'm a size X or weigh a certain amount, because that's not realistic. Our bodies don't stay the same across our lifespan. So yes, I do think it increases a feeling of being unsafe. And that's really important to recognise that that's not a problem with your body. That's the environment that you're in being quite destabilising. But the problem is the system, not your individual body.
Okay, so let's talk about the system. BMI, body mass index. So this is a really interesting thing, because the entire health system in the UK and in America as well is, well, let's not talk about the health system in America, but it's probably best. But it is run on this kind of BMI, like the whole way through. Whenever you go to the doctor, you have to put down your BMI, even if you're going to talk about something completely unrelated. But everything comes back to weight. And I know this. I have had this experience where I have gone to the doctor. I had eventually, after a lot of medical gaslighting, I kept having palpitations, and he was like, have you tried losing weight? You're stressed, you're a woman, all of that kind of thing. It turned out I actually had an arrhythmia, right, which I probably have had since I was very small, when my weight was smaller as well. So it's kind of, But anyway, it was like every time I went to the doctor, have you tried losing weight? And it was like, I was like, oh my God, this is all my fault. It's all my fault that I have this heart arrhythmia. It's all, and I look back on it and I think, oh, I am obese by the BMI terms, and that's fine. Like I'm really not bothered by that at all, because I run marathons, I run half marathons, but I get this constant thing whenever I put up a reel of myself running the London Marathon or the Great North Run or whatever in my underwear, which I do not to say, hey, everyone, you should all be my body size. You should all let yourself go a bit or whatever and be a bit fat. It's good to be fat or it's good to be higher weight. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's good to be able to exist in your body, whatever size it happens to fucking be, right? Absolutely. Whether I'm 5 stone more or 5 stone less, I deserve to exist and I deserve to try and do these things and get out there and live my life without people, making a judgment of them. And it's almost like I have to explain to people that I almost am making a spectacle of myself or showing my body off to make the point that my body is it's not irrelevant. Obviously, bodies are amazing, but it's like the way my body looks doesn't actually impact that much on what I can do with it. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, unless we make it very central to our worth, in which case it has.
Yeah, but of course we've made it essential to our worth because that is what society says it is. So talk to me about the BMI system and how flawed it is.
Well, the BMI system was invented by a mathematician to look at populations. It was never designed as an individual health marker, but it's become used as such. And the problem is it doesn't account for body composition, ethnicity, so many individual variables, and yet it's used to gatekeep treatment. As you say, it's terribly influential in terms of weight stigma in medical settings. I have a friend that told me, this is years ago now, but she said to me, I could walk into my doctor's with a 9-inch nail through my palm and they would blame it on my weight.
But also, what I think people don't seem to understand, because I get so many messages from people being like, I'm really concerned about your joints. I'm concerned about your health.
Because arthritis doesn't happen in thinner body
But
people.
also it's like, but are you really concerned about my health and my joints? Or are you concerned about the right you have to look down on a group of people that you think you're better than? That's what it's really about.
And that's concern trolling too.
Yeah, but also shaming someone. What people don't seem to get their head around is if shaming people for their weight made people healthier, if it was that simple, no one would be higher weight. No one would be.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because let me tell you, the shame you experience as someone in a bigger body is fucking endless. Like, people don't even have to say anything. It's like I just have to sit in a bus seat or whatever, or on a flight, and it's like, oh, this seat is shaming me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm glad that the Life of Bryony team got a bigger, like, proper seat for me to sit in. But, and I'm not even that big. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just a kind of 16, 18, 20 size woman, But it's if that was what it took to get people to lose weight, I mean, diet culture wouldn't exist. And I think people don't understand that actually if you really care about someone, if you really do care about someone's joints and their health and their well-being, you let them exist as they are, because all the research shows that body acceptance leads to far better health outcomes.
Absolutely. People take better care of the things that they like.
Yeah.
And there is a huge amount of evidence of the impact on the impact of weight stigma on health outcomes. And paradoxically, the more people are shamed and placed under stress, the more likely they are to turn to food to cope, and the higher their weight becomes. That is just very well evidenced. And so it, as you say, it doesn't work to shame people, and it doesn't work to shame yourself either. And what I really encourage people to do is to think about the workability of what they've tried already. If you've gone around the dieting loop 100 times already and you've ended up still in a place where you feel at war with your body and at war with your weight, then maybe it's time to start trying something else. Maybe it's time to start trying something gentler, kinder, more compassionate. But in order to do that and to have the space to do that, it's so important to anchor into a community that is going to support you in doing that. And that might mean setting up some clear boundaries with family, friends, perhaps people that are taking GLP-1s who are very fixated on weight loss. And so you're actually protecting yourself a bit from that. And that can be hard in itself, holding boundaries and stepping back from people that are basically encouraging you to think about weight all the time, so that you have a bit of space to think about it in a different way and to practice it in a different way.
So can we also talk a bit about, you see just how much fat phobia there is out there when you see people in larger bodies who might have suddenly lost weight because they've been taking GLP-1s. And again, totally no problem with that. And then you see people shaming them for losing weight the wrong way. But this just tells us, doesn't it? It's like you want people to lose weight, and then when something comes along which helps them to lose weight, we shame them for doing it the wrong way. Like, it's never been about any concern for anyone's health, right?
No. This is really about controlling women and about suppressing women. It's not about health. And so whatever you're thinking about pursuing, whether it's GLP-1s or a specific diet protocol, the most important thing is to come back to what really matters to me. Am I fully informed, not just about the short-term implications of this protocol, but the long-term implications? Is it safe? Is it holistic? Is it going to support me psychologically, socially, biologically? And then make your decision that feels right for you.
I have a friend who has done a lot of work on themselves, and they have experienced a lot of like proper food addiction, and made the decision to go on GLP-1s from a place of absolute, like, genuine health. And I think in over 18 months has lost, like, he was like, it was never actually about the weight loss for him. So it was about being able to get back control of his life. And, you know, into that, lots of other kind of noise has gone. And he's like, the weight I've lost is sort of incidental. It's is the weight you will lose when you are eating. You go from eating vast amounts to eating normally. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. And again, that's what I want to kind of address, the complexities of this, because it is genuinely life-changing for lots of people. And again, so I just want to make that clear. This is not a criticism of people who choose to take it, because everyone is different. But I think it is trying to say it's really important that you make that decision from a genuine place of health, rather than a sort of like, a place of fear.
And that's one of the questions around GLP-1s that trouble me at the moment, because you're absolutely right. They can be transformative for some people, particularly those with medical need. And at the same time, we just don't know what the long-term implications are. So either people stay on these medications long-term in a chronic way. That obviously has cost implications and potentially other implications too, in terms of your biology and psychology and so on. Or people have to taper off them. My concern is what happens then.
What does happen then?
Well, a lot of people put the weight back on and more, just like they would following an extreme diet, sometimes following bariatric surgery. That's how the body responds. Our bodies really fight hard to get back up to a set point. And what concerns me about GLP-1s particularly is that GLP-1s are not the only pathway that impacts appetite. There's other aspects, leptin, ghrelin, the kind of hormonal aspects. And I think when you influence one pathway, you are almost certainly going to influence the others too. And so what metabolic adaptations are happening whilst people are taking these medications?
This is so interesting. Can you talk a bit about that, how our bodies, doesn't matter what weight you are, if you start to go into the cycle of restricting and binging, which lots of us are in, our body wants to cling on to stuff so that we can survive should we go through. So if you think about our ancestors, the cavemen, they would go long times without eating. So their bodies would cling on to what they could so that they had stores and reserves.
Absolutely. Our bodies are very well adapted to downregulate our metabolism during a famine. As you say, it's an absolute survival mechanism and it works really well. It doesn't work well when you're dieting to try and control your weight in a way that's not meant to be controlled. And so when people calorie suppress, whether that's through dieting, bariatric surgery, GLP-1 use, what's going to happen is your metabolism is likely to downregulate, so that when you stop, and very often that's not a question of willpower or motivation, because our more primal parts of our brain, the amygdala, for example, that's like the brain's alarm system, will totally override any kind of higher function. So you can be as motivated and have the most willpower in the world, and it doesn't matter. Your body will override that. And what happens then is you have an enormous drive to eat, which is why people end up often dissociating and finding themselves surrounded by rappers and things like that, and thinking, what on earth, what am I doing? I'm sabotaging myself. And what happens then when people feel they've sabotaged, they feel guilty, they feel shame. And so the cycle gets worse and worse and worse. And that's another issue that I have with GLP-1 use, is that it doesn't address any of the psychological underpinnings of why people get to a place of having disordered eating, whether that's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder. It doesn't address any of it. And often those issues are relational injuries and they need to be healed.
By which you mean, talk to me, what is a relational injury? So for someone listening or tuning in who's like, what? What are the relational injuries that we all carry around?
Sure. Everyone's experience is slightly different, but we all have an attachment. You might have heard of attachment theory. That normally starts in childhood with our parents. And it may be around our body, or it may be about something else. But it's essentially a sense of, am I safe? Am I secure? Am I okay in myself? The more secure a child is, the less likely they are to have issues around their body image and subsequently eating disorders. And so in order to address those things, we need to go back to those original injuries. That doesn't need to mean doing, I think often when people think about therapy, they think about it being really painful and deep and like emotionally brutal. It doesn't have to be like that at all. And actually, healing for me needs to be slow. It needs to be gentle. Sometimes it needs to be playful, fun, because actually that's what gives our nervous system a sense of safety. And that's where healing really starts. And often we're wounded in community, but we also heal in community, and being surrounded by people who are also doing similar or in a similar journey, it can be really, really profound.
Okay, so people listening right now who are on their way to work, or they're back from the school, they're, driving back from the school run, and they are like, okay, I need to do some healing with my body, right? I think this is what I need to do. I don't, I need to tune out of all of this noise. How do we protect our brains and calm our nervous systems in a world that is suddenly obsessed with weight loss again?
Okay, there's lots of things we can do. Firstly, I do think it's important to look at your environment and to try and curate that both online and offline, so that you're not being bombarded by messages that just reinforce this idea that your body has to look a certain way or weigh a certain amount in order to be okay. So that might mean going through your social media feeds and being really critically aware about how certain accounts make you feel, what gets a vote for you, and curating that so that your feed is primarily full of either neutral, like puppies or surfing or whatever you like, stuff that makes you feel good, but ultimately things that fill you with a sense of comfort, inspiration, people doing similar work, so that you're not being fed constant messages all the time. And there's plenty of that. So I think doing an audit of your social media can be really helpful. Then thinking about your relationships, and are there certain people in your life for whom weight loss is a big thing at the moment, and that might bring that top of mind for you too. And is there a conversation that needs to be had with those people around the fact that you're trying to work on self-acceptance, and actually that's not particularly helpful for you, so that's not a conversation that you can have right now.
Instinctively, when you say that, Charlotte, I go, I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
The ways that you can say it, because also, there's this other thing of like, it's that person that is choosing to lose weight. They're free to do that.
Absolutely.
And just as you're free to not want to have to engage in the conversation, can you just let us know that it is okay to say, I'm really happy for you that this works
Absolutely.
for you, but I don't really want to talk about diets and weight loss.
Yeah. And if you don't want to, I think for a lot of people it feels quite confronting to have those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
So you can always just step away or divert the conversation onto something else. It doesn't have to be
Puppies.
Yes, exactly.
Surfing.
Exactly. And there are lots of ways to do that. And I think you just have to check in with yourself and ask, am I willing to say, actually, this is a conversation that isn't great for me, but I'm happy that things are going well for you? Or do you want to do it more subtly?
In your book, you talk about an exercise, which is just walking around for a day and noting down, maybe in the notes app of your phone, how many times you hear people talk about bodies or refer to bodies. It's quite wild.
It's wild. And I have I know I have a attentional bias to this because this is my work, it's my passion. So I'm very tuned into it. But even so, it's everywhere. And I think we have to be really compassionate with ourselves around that. It has got harder recently. There has been a massive regression into diet culture with the GLP-1s becoming mainstream. And I think to ignore that is doing ourselves a disservice. It has got harder, but it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do to give up and join in if that's not what feels right for you. I think it just means that we need to be particularly mindful about, first of all, protecting ourselves from that as much as possible, and then buffering that impact as far as we can by surrounding ourselves by people who are also supporting a body acceptance journey and doing the things that help you to feel safe in your body and to remind yourself that your body is a good body, no matter what size it is. It does a load of really good stuff for you. And it enables you to live the life that you have. And it's the one and only body you have. So it's so important to take care of it.
Could you also talk a bit about food morality and how important that is? It's the food noise, right? Oh, no, I shouldn't have that. That's bad. That's, I need to be a bit good today. Like, what the hell? Are we children, being marked at school? Talk to us about just grounding ourselves a bit more in the reality of what food is. And, there's an awful lot of diet culture. Diet culture, it hasn't gone away. I think it's just sort of shape-shifted into something different, and there's a sort of wellness culture and gut health. I'm like, what? People do a lot of quite unhealthy things to their bodies in the name of gut health now.
This is one of the massive issues with social media, is that the spread of misinformation is rapid and a lot of it isn't grounded in research. So that's why one of the things I write about extensively in my book is about digital literacy and critical awareness. Because if you believe everything that you hear on social media, you are going to be led down a very misleading road. And interestingly, one of the symptoms of disordered eating and eating disorders is food rules, very rigid thinking around food. And so one of the things that I'd encourage people to do is to be really aware around the narrative you have around food and to notice when you're starting to categorize foods into good and bad, healthy and unhealthy, and so on. And also there's lots of people, I think, have this narrative of, oh, I need to earn that food. All of those things add shame and they add complexity around food and are just not healthy. The reality is that every type of food can fit into a balanced, healthy diet, obviously in moderation. If you eat lettuce all day long, that's not going to be healthy for you. So everything in moderation. But that's across weeks, months, not days. So we don't need to be really rigid about it. And actually, flexibility is so important around food, because what that enables us to do is really return to our body's wisdom around what we need. And it enables us to reconnect with that inherent wisdom and trust we have for when to start eating, when to stop eating.
I find it really hard to do things in moderation, And so what would you say to someone listening like me who is like, but I can't moderate. I find myself disassociating and then there's wrappers all around me.
I'd be curious about why you're dissociating. And I'd be encouraging someone to slow down and to really focus on what's going on in my body right now. What is it that I'm trying to get away from? What do I need? Because I think a lot of people have a nourishment barrier. And I don't just mean food nourishment, I mean emotional nourishment too.
A nourishment barrier. I like the sound of this. What is a nourishment barrier?
It's something that stops you being able to really internalize safety and comfort. And in today's society, where, especially in the midst of diet culture, where we all feel judged and like we have to be a certain way, we start to mistrust other people. The amount of people I work with who are just convinced that everyone is judging them, everyone's going to think badly of them. And so that breeds self-criticism. If I criticize myself first, then I get in there before anybody else. And that in itself becomes a habit. But it's all the goodness, all the light, all the love.
We don't let the goodness, the light, the love in.
Exactly.
Well, it's interesting because when you walked in here, Charlotte, I said, oh, and this is like something quite, so I like your nails. And you said, oh, well, they're several weeks old and they're growing out. And it's so ingrained in us. Like to just spend a day noticing how much we put ourselves down is so important. Like, because I think anyone listening who's like, this all feels like too much. Like, I don't know how I go from, from being the way I am to being like, I love you. And it's not like stand in the mirror and say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's just don't stand there saying, I hate you. It's like, just be aware of the internal critical voice that exists and that stops us from getting that emotional nourishment that we need.
Absolutely. And it has to also be intentional. I love that you called me out on the nail thing earlier, because you're absolutely right. I still have to work on it all the time. And when someone gives me a compliment, I try and really take it in. And actually, I bring my hands to my heart and I say thank you. And I try to internalize it, because I've had a really strong nourishment barrier, and it's taken me a long time to actually start to trust and let in the good. And slowly it's really made a difference to me. I've got to a place now where I feel like I can be filled up by something other than food, and that's a fantastic place to be. It's a much more peaceful place to be. And what's also happened for me is that I can start to give that to myself too.
Okay. So it's about getting to a place where we enjoy food. You know, like yesterday I had just this delicious Sunday roast, and it was kind of like a highlight of my day. And I think the place I've got to on it, and not just on food, but on everything, is like, am I nourishing myself with this decision, or am I trying to punish myself with this decision?
Absolutely. And also, food isn't just about how much is on a plate or what's on the plate. It's also about the social connection. In previous eras, the way that people knew that you were okay is that you came to the table to eat together. That's what safety is. We're together. And of course, nowadays, we're not together very much, really.
No.
Not in a real heart-to-heart way. And so there's so much focus on what's the right way to eat, what's the right way to manage your weight, but actually what it really comes down to is how safe do you feel in your body. And that's why people of all body sizes can feel body confident, because they feel safe in themselves no matter what they weigh or what they look like.
So we need to get back to more of that, like family cooking together, coming around the table together.
And that can be biological family, that can be chosen family, that can be your pet dog.
Yeah.
It's whatever you have access to that helps you feel grounded, safe, calm. And that normally means slowing down. And of course, that's the complete opposite of the way most of us live our lives. We rush around, we ignore our internal cues, we try and get rid of any discomfort. And that's our body saying, I'm not okay. Like I need something. And what often happens then, for anyone who has a difficult relationship with food, is that food gets used to regulate. And so part of healing is also learning how to regulate your nervous system. And sometimes food can help with that, because food is soothing sometimes, and that's okay. But if it's the only thing you use to soothe, then that can become a problem in itself.
So, of course, the other thing is, Charlotte, that we are all trying to undo the generations of body dysmorphia that have been handed down through grandparents, like all of us. And I also think that it's so important that we are modeling this to our children, right? And we're remembering that they are not stupid and they pick up on this kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. Kids pick up on what's modeled to them. And I do want to really emphasize the fact that no parent can or needs to be perfect. We will all slip up. We've all grown up in this context. And so it's natural that things are going to slip into conversations that you perhaps recognise later weren't the most helpful things. So I just want to say that. But there is so much you can do to help support your kid in having a different experience to what you had if you grew up feeling at war with your body. And those things can range from being mindful about the way you speak about food, like we talked about earlier, in terms of not moralising food, not categorising food, making sure that, you're in charge of what and when, and you trust your kid to decide how much. And also things like how you talk about your own body, remembering that your child is probably very likely to have a body just like yours when you grow up. So the messages they internalise around different body types are the ones that are later going to help to form their own body image.
This is so important because in your book, there's a fantastic passage about a child being called fat and the way that a parent responds to it. And I find it really interesting because fat is seen as such a derogatory term and we have to be really careful. I
don't use it as a derogatory term. I use it as a neutral descriptor.
No, but that's the thing.
Tall,
I think it's really important to say, can we not use fat as an insult?
Absolutely.
It's okay. My daughter got really upset on my behalf because someone had called me fat. And I was like, it's fine.
Sure.
It's fine.
It depends on the intent. And I think that's so important to recognise. Kids now might be using those kind of terms in a different way to what we attach to them meaning-wise. And so it's helpful, I think, to check in with your child as to what the context was, how was it said, what do they think that person meant, so that you're not unintentionally reinforcing negative associations with a particular descriptor. Other things you can do, if your kid is using social media or is being exposed in any way, helping them be really critically aware and be mindful about what shows up in them when they look at certain material. So that they're starting to tune in to, okay, what does my body say about this? How safe do I feel when I look at this? Does it make me feel good about myself or does it make me question myself? Who benefits from me feeling that way? And so they then start to ask questions.
I like that question. That's a question we can all ask ourselves.
I ask myself that all the time.
Who benefits from me feeling like shit?
Absolutely.
Because it ain't me.
And also, for example, recently, you've probably seen this, influencers with 20% discount codes for GLP-1s. Do they have the necessary understanding biologically, socially, psychologically to be able to be advocating that anyone takes these drugs? The answer is probably highly no. And so being aware of that and asking those questions about, what's in it for them and how is this really impacting me can help to just get a little bit of space between you and that content, whether it's for you or your child.
I want to end this podcast with a little biology lesson. And some people may have heard me say this before but it's absolutely what I come back to every time I find myself spiraling and thinking I'm not good enough. I remind myself of the absolute miracle that I am and that all humans are. The chances of any of us existing are I can't pronounce the number, but it's there is more chance of dinosaurs roaming the earth again, or Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn coming together and forming some sort of political party. Any of us existing is very, very unlikely, right? So for a start, your biological parents, right, at the exact moment they chose to come together. So my mum, my dad, in November 1979, right, had someone knocked on the door and interrupted them, or had my dad more likely said something really fucking annoying that had pissed my mum off, I might not exist. Bryony might not exist. the life of Bryony would not exist, right? Okay. But for whatever reason, they did get it on. And then what happens is, and it makes me shudder to think of it, but we're going to do it to make the point. Millions of sperm were released from my dad into my mother's body. So the one sperm that eventually fertilizes the egg that goes on to be the zygote and then the embryo that is you. And as we all know, tragically, not every pregnancy goes the distance. And we also know that the day we are born is often the most dangerous day of our lives. That's what doctors say. And then every day after that, I've had to stay alive to come, the universe really fucking wants us all to be here, right? And the universe wants us to be here, and they don't want us to look like Kim Kardashian or whoever is in trend or whatever. They want us to look like us and be like us and exist in our wonderful, wonderful bodies that our souls have been put into. And that's what I want to say to you, Charlotte, and to everyone listening. You are a miracle. You are a miracle, and you are wonderful, whether you are taking GLP-1s, whether you are not taking GLP-1s, whether you are listening to this naked, standing on your head. I fucking love you, and I want you to be here as you are. We need you as you are, not as some other slimmed down, smaller, different, manufactured version of you. And on that note, I'm going to go and have a lie down. Well, how are you all feeling? I want to know. Please get in touch with me on Instagram and tell me what you think on the subject. How are you protecting your head, and how do you keep your body feeling safe? Message me, let me know. And if this conversation helped, please do rate, review, and share, because it enables us to get the word out and to carry on having conversations like this. But most importantly, look after yourself. We're back Friday with a special bonus episode. Until then, take care, and remember, you're a miracle.